Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a quick review of Alton's new Ultralight Bugnet Tent. I've been in the market for something like this for a while now. I typically do cowboy camping, which is where you camp on the ground without protection. But as we're transitioning out of winter into the warmer seasons, things like snakes and bugs are starting to become a concern again. So this isn't your typical tent, it's a frameless tent. It's meant to be used with 2 trekking poles or 2 sticks, or you can tie it to a tree. I'll cover the different ways you can set it up. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to be going over how you can protect yourself from the rain in this, because it is just a Bugnet tent. It doesn't protect you from the rain on its own. But other than that, let's get into it. So what you get included is a drawstring carry bag, the tent itself, a peg bag with 6 pegs inside, and 2 guy lines that are pre-attached to the tent with line lockers. The setup is super easy and it's only ever taken me around 2 minutes to finish. So first you want to lay it out flat and then peg out all 4 corners. On each of the corners there's a lightweight beam going through the material, which helps reinforce the bathtub frame. And once you've done this, you'll either want to grab your trekking poles that you brought with you, or go out into the bush and find 2 sticks that are about 120 centimeters or just above your waistline. Once you've got your poles, all you need to do is grab one of the pre-attached guy lines and then wrap it around the top of the stick, and then lead the rest of the string away from the tent diagonally and peg it into the ground. I just want to quickly note that I actually found the tent usable with only 1 pole keeping it up. It is a little bit cramped inside, but you'll have just enough room to sit up near the doorway, and when you're lying down the net is completely off your face. So if you're caught in a pinch and you need to get this thing up extremely fast, I think this is a viable option. When the tent's fully set up, it has a bathtub around the perimeter of it, which is like a layer of waterproof material. So if it was to rain really heavily and there was some running water near you, you won't have to worry about any water rushing in. The door has a little toggle system at the top, so you can actually roll it up into a little bundle and keep it open. So in terms of the space you have inside, I actually quite like the design they've gone with. It slopes down a lot near your foot end, which slightly reduces the amount of material on the tent and thus reducing the weight a bit. And you don't really need that room at your foot end. In terms of the height, I'm 6'1", and it was just enough for me. If you're any taller than me, you might have a little bit of discomfort with this, especially if it hasn't been pulled to its absolute max height. At the apex of the tent, there's plenty of room for my head, but typically you're not going to be sitting right up against the back of it, and so there were a lot of times where it was brushing against my head. I was actually really surprised with how much floor space you get inside. I was worried I'd have to keep my boots and spare clothes and stuff outside the tent, but if you shift your sleeping mat over to the side, you can easily fit everything next to you. Alright, so that's the Bugnet tent on its own without any shelter. As you saw, it only takes like 2 minutes to set up. The hardest part is sourcing some sticks, but if you bring trekking poles then you're fine. And as you saw, you can also use it with just 1 pole if you really want to. The only thing I'd change or add to this is some more entryways. So currently you've only got the 1 door here, and it would be really nice if there was another door on that other side, because at the moment you kind of have to remember where the door is and then set up and arrange the tent based on that doorway. Or another doorway on this tall part here so you can kind of dive headfirst in. I don't know, it's not the end of the world, but a bit of versatility is always nice when it comes to these kind of products. Alright, so now I'll show you how you can protect this thing, because as soon as I saw this design I thought, how are you meant to cover this with a tarp? Especially in places where you've got no trees. The issue is these 2 big poles that are poking up. You don't really want to lay a tarp over that because it'll puncture up. And I mean, the Alton tarp is extremely durable, but it's still uncomfortable to see it being pierced with 2 poles. So it's really easy to cover it in woodland like this, because there's plenty of tie-up points for the tarp, and you can get the tarp quite raised up so that it's not touching this at all. First I'll show you the purely ground setup with no trees, and then after that I'll be setting up my A-frame shelter, which is what I'm actually going to be camping in tonight. So before we start this design, you'll need to have a good knowledge of how to set up a trucker's hitch, because this layout will use 2 of them. And it's also a benefit if you know how to make an auto-locking trucker's hitch. So you'll want to start by pitching out the Bugnet tent on the 4 corners, and then lay the tarp flat over the tent, and you want the middle seam of the tarp to be running up the middle of the tent. Have the tarp extend out a little bit from the head end of the tent. The foot end of the tent can be uncovered because this has a shell which protects it from rain. Now peg out the 2 corners of the tarp near the foot end of the tent. And then at the head end of the tarp, attach a guy line to the middle tie-up point. From here you'll want a tall stick that's roughly 170 centimeters, which is about in line with my nose. Wrap the guy line around the top of the stick and then peg it into the ground. For these next 2 corners, you can actually do this however you want. For me, I tied a guy line on one of the corners and then pegged it straight into the ground, and for the other I propped it up with another stick and then tied it out, and that gave me a nice awning to sit under at the entrance of the tent. You'll need something called a spreader stick, which is going to put horizontal tension onto the tent. The spreader stick should be around 80 to 90 centimeters in length. You don't want to go any shorter than this, otherwise you're going to lose tension. I'd recommend sawing or carving a notch into either end of the stick, because this will help hold it in place. This section now is probably the hardest part of the design. You want to wedge the spreader stick between the two guy lines that are attached to the tent. This is where you feed the string through the notches to help secure it. After this, we're going to make a trucker's hitch on each of these guy lines. You want to place the trucker's hitch loop as close to the stick as possible. Now take one guy line and wrap it around the top of the stick. Bring the working end back through that loop twice to make an auto locker, and repeat on the opposite guy line. Once you've got the trucker's hitch formed on both of these guy lines, slowly pull the mechanism towards you in a triangle shape, and you'll see everything tension into place. This took me quite a few tries to get it working properly, but once I did, it was pretty easy to replicate and quickly set up again.
So overall, I'd say this is a really good piece of kit. It's probably geared towards those people that are more willing to do a bit of bushcraft and tie out ropes and things like that. I've heard rumors that there's going to be a double size version of this coming out, so that'll be excellent for couples. Another thing I'd say this is great for is those of you that do frequent car camping, because I see so many people lugging out enormous swags when they do car camping, and then they just chuck the swag underneath their car's enormous awning. This is cheap, it's lightweight, it takes up no size at all on the car, and you could set this up underneath your awning, and I think that would be a worthy replacement to a swag. Maybe not in the colder seasons when you got a lot of wind and you want to insulate yourself a bit more, but in the warmer seasons, this would just be perfect for car camping, I think. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review and found it helpful. I'll leave a link to the Bugnet Tent in the description. And just one more thing, if you want to see the full camping trip that I'm going to be doing tonight, that'll be out probably next weekend. That should be around 20 to 30 minutes, and you can see me properly using the Bugnet Tent. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you later.